de todos los continentes del mundo.
Live from West Berlin, it's the committee program with Julia Doubleday, Forrest, Lovette, Fiamma, Meli, Xhevat, Castrati, and yours truly, Jacopo, Castelletti. And now, a man who is in, by the looks of it, Milan, Arun Chowdhury.
Hi, and welcome to your committee program. And look, Jacopo, that is some sharp eyes. I am, in fact, in Milan. It's almost like you are a real Italian boy. Just like Pinocchio. He was a real Italian boy, too, as I recall. Is this offensive? Do I need to get off of this right away? This is offensive. Okay, this is offensive. In that case, we are going straight into your Global News Rodeo.
This is the Global News Rodeo with Arun Chowdhury and Forrest Lovette.
Your Global News Rodeo, which, as you know, is a roundup of global events as curated by the show's own Forrest Lovette. Let's go. Item number 1, 3 updates on the war. And the first is Deutsche Welle is reporting on the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal says that the war will cut grain harvest by 20% compared to last year's totals. Countries in North Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, which depend on grain from Ukraine, have started to feel the impacts. And I think, editorializing quickly, what the worry is that this sort of food instability with some energy instability with a little bit of political unrest can push some other countries into the situation that Lebanon finds itself in, right? Which is almost sort of becoming a failed state. And climate is also the thing that's going to drive all of these things just an extra little bit into really pushing global chaos. And I think it's something we should all keep an eye on. Back to our updates. As the news of civilian attacks surfaces, Ukrainian Deputy PM says they have negotiated 10 routes to evacuate citizens in designated humanitarian corridors. Following the atrocities in the city of Bucha, President Zelensky commented on the situation in the town of Borodyanka outside of Kiev, saying it is much more horrific. There are even more victims of Russian occupiers. I will say, we are seeing a lot of horrific things going back and forth, and people are throwing a lot of words around. I did actually appreciate, and I will probably get some hate mail for this, I did actually appreciate China's response, in that they were like, the things that we are seeing is what happens when there's war. Like, there is no such thing as clean war. And this idea that we sort of sold ourselves in the 90s with the bunker busters and with the sort of clean images of things, it's just not how any war is. Not when Russia does it, and not when the U.S. does it. Okay. The pro-Russian mayor, Konstantin Ivashchenko, who was recently appointed in Mariupol, said 60 to 7% of apartments in the city have been destroyed, and 5,000 civilians have died fighting. That's just an update on what's happening, and probably the fiercest battle, which, of course, is Mariupol. Item 2, Fat Cat Autocrat. Nice for us. I'm glad we're back on something with a little spunk in it, right? It's hard. Hungary's Orban wins again. Euronews is reporting that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has declared victory, claiming a mandate for a 4th term. The right-wing nationalist and his party Fidesz won in an apparent landslide last week. Orban addressed his supporters in Budapest on Sunday, saying, "We won a victory so big that you can see it from the moon, and you can certainly see it from Brussels." And went on to say, "The whole world has seen in Budapest that Christian democratic politics, conservative civic politics, and patriotic politics have won. We are telling Europe that this is not the past, this is the future." Orban and his party have repeatedly been condemned by the EU for democratic obstruction and widespread corruption. The opposition coalition United for Hungary said it wasn't an equal fight, and they will continue to dispute that the election was free and democratic. I do want to say, when you do see results this skewed, it is not just the kind of machine cheating at the end. It's not just the media push. There actually is a problem with messaging and narrative. And I hope the opposition digs into that, because there are a lot of people in Hungary with a lot of really smart ideas about how to carry these things forward. Item 3, Justice Jackson. Senate confirms judge to Supreme Court. I'm not sure if Justice Jackson is supposed to be, is this a Jackson's reference, Forrest? Are we doing something, or are we just talking about the woman? We're just talking about the woman. Okay, got you. Okay. NPR's reporting the U.S. Senate has confirmed Supreme Court Justice nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson in a 53-47 vote. Jackson will be the 116th Supreme Court Justice, and more importantly, the first black woman to serve on America's highest court. President Biden commented on Twitter of the decision. Judge Jackson's confirmation was a historic moment for our nation. We've taken another step towards making our highest court reflect the diversity of America. She will be an incredible justice, and I was honored to share this moment with her. Jackson replaces Justice Stephen Breyer, who is known for his belief that the SCOTUS should remain an apolitical head of the judicial branch. However, Jackson will now operate in a court with conservative majority rule that has proven to be anything but apolitical. You just hear me constantly sour on everything with American politics. Judge Jackson seems cool to me. She seems like a cool person, and I'm glad she's in there. And I feel a little bad for her that the Democratic politics of we will put a black woman in here somehow can put an asterisk by her name. And I just feel like we need to get on this kind of tokenistic identity politics communications, and we need to really examine how we intersect the people who we want to be right on our team and the jobs that they do without just this really reductive, simplistic thing. I will tell you, as a human of color, that there is nothing worse than feeling like the world thinks you're getting something for the wrong reasons. It is a deeply painful thing. Item 4, a slap on the fist. UN suspends Russia. Reuters is reporting the United Nations has voted to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council. A U.S.-led push saw 93 countries vote in favor, 24 countries vote against, and 58 countries abstain. Russia's deputy UN ambassador said the decision was an illegitimate and politically motivated step. Later, Russia announced that they had decided to quit the council. The U.S. representatives were pleased with the results, but China's UN ambassador was quoted saying, "Such a hasty move at the General Assembly, which forces countries to choose sides, will aggravate the division among member states and intensify the confrontation between the parties concerned. It is like adding fuel to the fire." Item 5, euthanize me, Captain. Canada extends law for assisted suicides. IFL Science is reporting that next year, Canada will allow for assisted suicide for adults with incurable mental illnesses. The Medical Aid in Dying, or MAID bill, was first passed in 2016, but only allowed for suffering or terminally ill adults. In March 2021, the bill was amended and expanded to patients with grievous and irredeemable medical conditions. However, mental illness, long-term disability, or any curable condition was specifically excluded. The new law change will go into effect March 2023, and will cover severe depression, personality disorders such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, PTSD, and other mental conditions that are considered irremediable. The eligible will be anyone 18 or older who is deemed mentally competent, can provide informed consent, and can prove their decision does not stem from outside influence. I mean, I think it's easy to feel like these things are really hard to get right, and I'm sure that is true, but we don't have to start over again. There are many places in the world, Australia was the most recent with the Reason Party pushing it, but also Switzerland, many other places that do have assisted suicide, and we can see that it's one of those things where you're like, but what if, all of these scenarios, and those what if scenarios don't come up very much because people generally are doing the thing that they're choosing to want to do. It's a strange analogy, but it's almost like on the show when we talked about, well, what if every community said we want self-determination and we want our language group to have its own country? Yeah, that'd be a problem, but it's actually not the situation, right? Oftentimes by trying to stamp out the exceptions, we forget the universal rules and the universal justice behind universal rules. So we're sticking up for that here on the committee program. Thank you so much. Forrest, do we have any more items, any more news articles? Maybe some with more puns? I feel like we kind of drew back on that.
No, we're finished.
Yeah, you know what it means when the lights go out, actually. So we probably are finished. I think we probably should just cut.
Ciao and welcome back to our polling update here at the polling channel, brought to you by the committee program. Bad weather in France paradoxa, with Macron and far-right Le Pen coming within a few points of each other in the first round predictions, with leftist Mélenchon rising but not surging. We will keep an eye on this system. In the Philippines, dynastic right candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is dominating the field at 57%, more than double his closest liberal rival Robredo, this proposed poll. And in Australia, the Morrison wave would appear to have finally broken, with the Australian Labor Party edging ahead in federal election polls to 39.5%, leading the Conservative Liberals by 5. Yes, they have funny names for everything down there, except for, of course, the Roy Morgan poll. Thank you so much for watching, and stay safe out there. This is Committee Calls Cabbies.
Hi, And welcome back to the committee program. I am your host, Arun Chaudhry, and now we are going to get our news in a third and vital way. We have already heard it in sort of article digest form from the show's own Forrest, Lovette. We just got it on the committee polling channel in beautiful visuals from Jacopo, Castelletti. But now we're going to go where I get my news from. People are always asking, where do you get your news from? And I get it from a wide variety of sources, understanding that they are all biased and understanding what that bias is. I think that's critical. We always want some kind of objective truth to be shot at us. It's like we have to actually do that work ourselves. And I ask people who do things for a living where they talk to people, and that definitely includes cab drivers. And so we're going to have a new segment that's called Calls with Cabbies, where we're going to talk to folks who are cab drivers, who work closely with cab drivers, who have that kind of rough and tumble experience with voters. And frankly, I'm telling you, a cab is better than any focus group when it comes to hearing what people think and fast. I've often thought that it would be smart in places like Iowa for campaigns to flood the local gig economy market with their own drivers, because they would actually get vast amounts of intel and maybe even pick up a little scratch for the campaign pizza coffers. But joining us today from Slovenia, where, as you've heard from me many times, they have an election coming up soon that actually is an important bellwether in how things are going in Europe. Joining us today is Dejan Jefim. Oh God, did I say that correctly?
Yes, you said correct.
I did. Oh, because I wrote it down and then I looked down and then I looked up. Dayon, I did a good job. Great. He's joining us. And look, you are someone who works closely with cabbies. I mean, do you agree with my assessment that that's how you can really hear what's going on, even before we get into Slovenia specifics? Like, talk to me about your experience with voters and riding.
There is no objective opinion on such heavy matters than like Uber and or politics is. So you have to listen to subjective matters in order to understand each of the opinions, and then you can decide based on these subjective matters and let's say develop your own objective matter. If you
That's right. That's right.
That.
You're going to hear a lot of varieties very quickly, and you can triangulate into the middle and find out what's really going on based on any crazy thing anyone says.
Of course.
But specifically, specifically Slovenia, right, where you are and where a lot of folks are working very hard in an election that will come to a climax at the end of this month. I think on the 23rd or the 24th, is whichever the Sunday is. The 23rd?
24th.
The 24th. 24th is a Sunday. And we've talked about it a little bit on the show in very broad strokes. Janez Janša is a liberal Democrat in the style of Orban, maybe, has, autocratic tendencies, not a particular fan of the free press, has origins in the progressive communist wing of the party, right? All these guys kind of come from someplace, end up someplace different. There is a coalition, including former prime ministers, sort of liberal folks, more left. What can you tell us about what is at stake in this election and who is at play?
So, like you said, you know our situation pretty well. So, at stake is either Slovenia. Slovenia was always a liberal country, very liberal. It's the most liberal country maybe in Europe. And also the politics was liberal. It was also left liberal, always left liberal politics. What happens in Slovenia is due to our parliamentary system, which is kind of different than the one you have in the US, which you have the presidential system. It's the same as in Germany. What happens to us is that the parties that get the votes, or the left liberal parties, or
the
liberal
center-left coalition, liberal in the American more than in the European sense.
It's here left, but it's liberal coalition. It's not left. It's not communist, And these are true liberals, and these guys often. What we have problem is with new parties entering each time of the election, because the liberal part of the politics is so strong that it happens that they fight between each other, and often a couple of times it happened that these liberals that were actually voted by the liberals, even some breaking the records in the elections with their parties, just switched to the hard right, which is Slovenia has the other pole, which is actually a hard right, like you said maybe in Serbia or in not maybe more like Hungary or even
yeah.
Russia. So these guys have really, because of the liberal nation of this country, have really little support among the people. Maybe 20 to 30% max with their satellites, and these guys never won actually the election. That's an objective truth. What does happen here is that in the middle of the term, which we have a 4-year term, happens that these guys just switch, and this is one of the things we want.
You had one of your large centrist parties switch from the center-left coalition to the right coalition.
Yes. It's actually quite ironic because these guys won with the record number of votes of liberal left votes, and after I think 2 years the party broke up. The guys with some dignity and with political correctness just left the politics, and also the founding member of this party, which was a really respected liberal person here, but some of the MPs the guys from the parliament just switched to the right. They did the deals. It was probably. If you want to say it directly, it was probably made with some financial benefits. So,
yeah.
And actually, these past 2 years was a perfect reflection of that. Slovenia was governed by hard right. These guys, nobody here knows Slovenia from this angle that we've seen in these 2 years. It was police repression. Slovenian police was one of the most respected police around here, especially in the Balkans where we originate. We were famous for that. We were famous for professionalism, especially in police. And now this just came down to like a classical political police, which is just like handling cases with political opposition, with protesters and stuff like that. You've seen it yourself. You've been here. It was some harsh measures on the protesters. This was never seen in Slovenia before this government. This is,
I think this is
another objective truth.
Important for our audience to understand, right? This isn't some sort of creaky, kind of working republic that's having a problem. It's actually much more akin, perhaps even to the U.S., where 20% is enough to sort of capture the government if you know how to maneuver power correctly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not what is seen here now. Obviously, you've seen it if you were here. Is that like this amazing amount of people who started to who became a political activist in the last 2 years. And these are people who we didn't know each other before, not even remotely. These are people who were affected by this government in each, like you were starting this with subjective opinions. These are people with subjective opinions who had opinions on their own matter. For example, myself, I'm not a cab driver, but I have a really small company who offers software just like Uber's. You will see it. We'll talk about it later, I hope. And we're offering it to small companies, and we were affected like this. We were also affected, me personally was also affected by how the school system was handled. For example, during the pandemic, it was horrible. The kids were at home, and I can see the knowledge. My kids are very okay in school, but I can see on them the knowledge is dropping. Compare it to the grades that we had. I went to the same school here, and it's completely a different time. I was going to school in communism. Nobody was learning at that time, or it was a different time. But this is a different school, but the grades are even maybe worse than we had. So, and I can also compare it because I have 2 kids. I can also compare the big one to the small one, which are 2 years apart. And this one was without the pandemics, and the other one was without with the pandemics. And the situation was really handled poorly here. So everybody was affected practically by this government personally. So at one point they tried to like replace all the heads of police stations in Slovenia, and they affected the whole police. They got into conflicts with practically all the unions in this country, with the police unions, firefighter union, taxi union. So there's and all these general unions that are like union centrals and stuff. They have a conflict with everybody in this country, and especially they have a conflict with the legal system, because you can understand why, because legal system in Slovenia is still hopefully kind of free.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously a unique story, but also we see this in a lot of places, right? A sort of incompetent right-wing government that is not delivering services, hanging on through fear, through as much as it can, media manipulation, but also on exploiting kind of the opposition fracture points. And I think we definitely see that here, as you mentioned, that weren't even elected. They came through with the party defecting from one coalition to the other. As this election is shaking out, what can you tell us is uniting maybe in a better way the coalition this time? And what can you tell us about some of the personalities in it? I mean, we know Marian Šarec, who was the prime minister before Janša, before this slight parliamentary coup was engineered. For Janša, was a moderate former comedian, much like our friend Zelensky in Ukraine, but has now been eclipsed by this fellow Golob. What can you tell us about these folks? Who are you rooting for? What is holding people together? What is keeping young and more left people involved? Because that's our audience. That's us.
What the main debate here is that the young people that you mentioned, I want to put them first, that are doing all this incredible work here because here it will be, I think, I'm pretty confident about that. It will be a record in the election percentage of the people turnout. Yeah. So these are all independent young people, and everybody's saying these are from those guys. They are buying even by the America, by Biden, by Putin, by everybody, but actually they are not paid by anybody. And surely they were maybe in their past or still in some political parties, but that's their right. It has nothing to do with their activism and their free time, which they're spending a lot of time. Some of these folks, they're spending a lot of their personal time, and this is like huge armada of people. I mean, it's something that is bigger than our military, bigger than our police. That's our registered members. So this is not a small scale operation. What I can tell you about politics is like this. About Janša, you have a guy there who is like a lot like him. These guys are lowering taxes, raising wages to everybody, free cars for everybody, and stuff like that, which is not anywhere near realism of financial or any other aspect of a state. The other guys, what I like the most about this moment is the support of people they have, which is huge, which will be because these new people who will turn out on these elections will not vote for the hard right. These are liberal young people. You know them, a lot of them. It's hard to find a hard right-wing young person. I don't know a lot of them. And I'm from a rural, not from a city, not from a metro area. This is a rural environment. So it should be a right-wing environment, but it's not still. So the opposition, I also like Marian Šarec, and I don't know him. I know him from comedian. I liked him from there, and I know his government because during these 2 years I invested a lot of my time thanks to the coronavirus. I'm sorry about the humor, but I had the time to do it, and I spent a lot of time researching what the previous governments did. And what I like about these guys were that they were considerate about depth of the country, which is one of the main indicators of prosperity. If you have a high debt, you cannot expect a big like a good country, which is my opinion. And these guys were actually one of the guys who actually lowered the depth of my country, because it's growing from the day from 30 years back when we were.
Yeah, he had a good reputation for good government and kind of delivering services competently.
Yes,
you
yes,
know,
but
yeah.
good guy. Also, his team was also good and still is. You know, I mean, Slovenians have now the options, because this was one of our sins was that we always voted against these right-wing guys. You know, right-wing guys, because we were afraid that they will come actually to power. We knew them, and this was now a demo of what they can do, and it's horrible. And because of that fear, we always voted for the guy who had in the public polls, which are suspicious, the most votes, you know, the most prospect to win these guys. So we always voted like that. Even Marian Šarec came to power probably because of that. Even the guys I told you before, which fall apart, also came from that. What is good about Marian Šarec is that his party didn't fall apart. They just grew stronger, and they're now a really good team. They're doing their story, and I like them. I also like Golob guy, like you said. He's a really good expert
on the center left.
He's leading in the polls, but I don't believe the polls, but people probably do. But he's a really intelligent guy. He's also not a politic. He's a business guy, and he's very competent. He's a doctor of electrotechnics. He ran one of the I think the biggest electroenergetic company in Slovenia. He was very successful at that, and he was replaced by this government. So what I don't like about him is that he went to politics out of necessity. So this is not a good motive, I think. And also he had really little time about it, because he had to pull these people, like candidates, really in a really short amount of time. And these guys are from all points of the country, and some of them are known that were from that party that broke up and went to the other side just for keeping the parliamentary paycheck, you know. And so some of these guys are actually in his party, and up to this point he didn't like step away from them or said anything about them. And also one of the guys was actually a Uber guy, you know, one of the team of the guys who were approached by Uber. That's how I know that some of these people are not good people, in my opinion, again. So that's what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of his personality, his character, or his judgment, or his competence. I'm afraid of his situation, because I was in the same situation as he was. You know, I was also under threat to lose my business and lose everything that I worked for all of my life. So I would not entrust myself this position at that situation. So it happened to me 1 year ago, but to him it's happening now. So he's a good guy, but still we need like rational, experienced politics who will be able to calm down the enormous stress in this country. This country is under a lot of stress. The hatred is incredible, something unseen in the Balkans, not here. So I mean, we are in the Balkans, but we feel not like in the Balkans. You know, it's horrible situation, and I'm feeling very delightful that it will end in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, and there's going to be a lot going on. And I will say I was someone who thought that there was, and I do have a couple more questions that we want to drill down on you with, but I will say someone who was sort of pretty optimistic generally, as you say, if turnout can be increased. And we saw in this water referendum, in which a lot of young people came out for the environment, that there are votes, and the more votes that come out, the more votes certainly stand against, the common enemy. And so I was pretty bullish, as we would say, positive on the election. I would say the war has me thinking in a different way a bit. It does strengthen incumbents. It does tend to strengthen the right. And despite Yansha having some ties with Putin and stuff, he's actually, done acrobatics, gymnastics, backflips to explain to people exactly how pro-Ukraine he is. He went there. He wants to accept 500,000 refugees or something that wouldn't even fit in Ljubljana.
Yeah, and close the airspace and stuff like that. It's not real. It's propaganda.
So how is this playing in the actual debates, though? Which is probably the only time the public are encountering this. They're not, as you talk to people when they're in cabs and stuff. People don't get politics right away from Twitter and talk to each other about it the way we do, right? It's like the debates will be a real time when people are watching what's happening, and we know those are happening over this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, people. It was, it was over this happening to us 2 years now, and at the beginning, it was like nothing happening, and then it was becoming like stressful, and then it turned out into complete fear, because all these guys who were doing this, like assaulting people on Twitter, the news, they're like fake news, like they call it, but they're really fake news. Did horrible black PR stories on people. Like I was one of them, they called me like everything. I will not say it on TV, but you can read it on internet. They translated it to English, and these are like all stupid stories. And they did it like to a lot of people, I was not the only one, and I had the power to fight them, but the majority of people just were afraid and just like disappeared into the darkness and never turned out in public again. And then after some time of after it because when these guys sense the fear of all the people, they become really arrogant, and like they step over some limits, and people Slovenians are one of the toughest people in the world. That's why we live in the center of Europe. So we're Slavic people, and we came the longest way from all the Slavic people. We are really calm people, and we don't like to brag about our abilities, but we are really tough because and after this people started rebelling, and the result you can see now. This is now, like I said before, an armada of young people who are like literally we will get all the people to the voting posts, and what we feel is that the general population, not only in Slovenia but in the world, is liberal. It's liberal, and it's also leftist, because I don't mean left in a communist kind of way, but left in a socialist kind of way, because we are a social
democracy, delivering services to people, etc. Yeah.
Also, we are a social animal. That's what makes us different from all the other animals. Our social interactions are on a much higher level than with other animals. So I think socialism is one of our it's in our blood. Yeah. Again, I don't mean socialism like in Soviet Union, or socialism in like Bolshevistic Russia. I mean like socialism in its sense that we want to help other people. We want to live in a community that is good for everybody, not good just for myself and my kids, because my kids will probably not feel very well in a society that will be where only they will be happy. I think they want to live with friends who will share the same lives as they do.
But do you worry that the war and the misinformation around the war will influence votes? I want to drill in on
No,
that with you.
no,
You're not.
no.
So you really think
People
this is
are not that
the
stupid.
conversation you're describing? You think is the conversation that's driving politics right now?
This is like a desperate attempt. These guys were posting like jokes about Zelensky, comparing him to Sharetz, which is also a comedian. They're both guys are comedians. Yeah, they share a same profession, and these guys were 2 years ago when the elections were for our previous parliamentary elections. These guys were actually mocking the Zelensky and comparing with this Sharetz guy, these are comedians and stuff.
Clowns.
This is famous. I can show you the articles. And now after 2 years, when there is a political profit out of it, they are like pretending best friends. We're helping Ukraine. We cannot help Ukraine, especially we cannot help it militarily. Slovenian military is very, very small. We are not aggressive nation. We have no offensive capabilities. We can also help. We can only help humanitarian way to Ukrainians, which would be the right way for these guys to, to maybe get a vote on this subject, but not like this. This is like hypocrisy, and people see it through. People are not stupid, they're this would be really like if nobody's buying this, people are now mocking this propaganda. If the trip to Kiev, which was, I want to help Ukraine.
No, I understand that. No, we're talking about the optics of this.
Everybody wants to help, but that was not helpful, and that probably didn't even happen, and it was a big meme here, on the Twitter and everywhere. So it was also on TV, and all the comedians were making fun of it. So it was not helping Ukrainians in any way. It was only doing us damage, as a country. We are losing respect in such moves. It was not even a EU move. It was a solo move.
You make good points that I would see reflected actually in different ways in other elections, both in questioning actually how much putting Ukraine messaging when there is not necessarily that much specific places can do is helpful, to people, because politicians are doing it a lot because they feel like it's something to get gained of, and center-left politicians do it even more because they feel like they have this sort of deficit of patriotism to make up for, Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But look, we aren't journalists here at the committee program. We're tacticians, as you know. We work on elections. We get dirty in elections, as are you. You have a tactic that I like the sound of a lot, and I was hoping that you could tell us about it. A little bit of an online-offline gambit that's going to get out the vote. And I wish that the show's friend Annie Weinberg was here because she loves this stuff, but I will make sure to clip it for her.
So what we did, our struggle started with the taxi drivers that came to us regarding the change of legislation for Uber. The change of legislation here was really brutal. The guy who was a known lobbyist for all of the Europe, who worked for Uber in Poland, just like he was a personal friend of this minister in the government. So it was done deal. Even the first document that they sent had a name Uber and something.
Right. The logo was still on there. You're like, y'all didn't erase the logo.
Actually, and it was sent in the between the government people, and some taxi drivers got to it, and then we rose up. And we fought really hard, and it was really dirty. It was during the corona. We protested. We did a lot of stuff. We've protested for 1 month, driving and stuff like that. We got for 60,000 euros of traffic penalties from this political police. We were doing peaceful protests. And I think we still hold the record in this country for being punished. And after that, still, we did everything in our power, and the law was still accepted. This is how it became that everybody in this country was affected because we were one of the first laws that they started to change that affected people. But then they went through all the other areas of life. So to the police, everything. So health and everything. So we lost that war. So they accepted. They accepted the vote, and I mean they voted for the law, and then we didn't give up. So what we do, because we're clever people, we can do apps, and we can do apps, and we also have a big community of taxi drivers in our union, which trust us, fortunately. And what we decided to do is, actually we didn't decide it. We were just fighting. We didn't know how. And then the referendum for water came, which these young people organized, which was a great thing. And what happened is that one of the ministers in the government did some like a bureaucratical trick to disable the people in the elderly homes to vote, because they have a right to vote there. So you have organizations.
It sounds like the U.S. Yeah.
And they just disable it, and then one of the taxi drivers, one of my friends, had the idea, we help them. And we organized really quickly with phones, with everything. Everybody went on board, really, and this was great. So we got a lot of people on the voting sites. It was also a good PR stuff, it was good in terms of people coming to the referendum, because it was live, and that was a great success. So after that, the guys who are developing apps here for taxi, which are the same as Uber, came up with the idea, let's do this digitally. So let's digitalize elections for the next time. So let's do an app. We will collect the volunteers. We will collect the taxi drivers who want to do it, and we will take everybody who needs a solidarity ride on the day of the elections to the election spot. So how we did it, it's quite simple. It's like normal, another taxi app, like you say, in US, where you have a lot of them by now, probably. So I can show it to you, but it's just another taxi app. So what is the point is that we have an app that you can download for Android or iOS, where you can order a cab from special locations where we are putting it as we speak. So now it's elderly homes. We'll see how much volunteers will be, but probably be a lot. So we'll put on hospitals. So everywhere the people we feel that that needs help, not just help. What we found out during the referendum for water is that people actually like to go out and hang out with somebody. It's not just about the
totally. You got a buddy.
Yeah, and these people are elderly. They need company, and it was really great last time, and I think now with these young people on board, because the last time it was, these people are doing something, but this time everybody knows we're doing it. It will be an app. We also be better than Uber in this way. We will have a call center where you can call for people who cannot order with app, cannot move their fingers or don't have a smartphone. So we'll have also a call center, and we'll have a lot of taxi drivers covering the bigger cities, and in the smaller cities, and in the villages, because the last time we did it with phones, so with apps it should be much easier. We will do it we will cover practically all of Slovenia. So anybody who would need a ride to the voting site, we will try to make it happen, either by ordering by app. We also have some special software for elderly homes when they can mass order. So we
excellent.
digitalized elections. So
no, this is great. This is great, and making it easy is great. And believe it or not, some of our audience may have relatives in Slovenia. Where should they direct them to find out where to get this app? Our First Lady used to be Slovenian, as a matter of fact. We're very proud of her.
if they're from Slovenia, they should follow Osmi Marec. You know them, yeah. This is the main NVO that is organizing this part of the project. There are a lot of other NVOs, and but these we are working with these people to make this project. So they have a lot of they have a online site. I can send you.
Yeah, send me the links and then we'll put them in the
Sure.
show description so we can
You
get
can
that
also see
message
the
out.
app. I think it's also translated to English because it's our standard taxi app. So it's so it should be in all the languages. So you can check it out. It's on market. It's on Android and iOS. So, but
That
it's
is so
not
great.
working. It will be working on 24th of April.
Yeah. Otherwise, people are just trying to get a ride someplace, which is nice, but which isn't the point. Why don't we plan on checking in after the election, and you can tell me, and we can see if it shakes out the way that we're talking about how it shakes out, and see again
I mean,
at street level what the real skinny is. And thanks so much for coming on, Dejan. We really appreciate you.
yeah. Thank you for having me on your show. Say
Speak
hi
soon.
to your buddy. I forgot
Oscar.
his name. I'm back.
His name is Oscar,
Oscar.
and he says
Okay,
goodbye
Oscar,
to.
yeah, I will remember.
Comite, comitato, comitiet, comiteto, corul, comiti, we yandwe, submiti, we committee.
And now, keeping up with the Hapsburgs.
From the Delta to the Falls, from the Grotto to the newly constructed Defense Ministry building, nothing captures the rhythm of Equatorial Fredonia like Cadre cigarettes. Never a rough puff with Cadre, sponsors of the committee program. And now, back with us once again for the 8th installment of Keeping Up with the Hapsburgs, our unique and uniquely in-depth look at the Hapsburg family is Hawley Brett. Thank you so
Hi.
much for being with us once again. How are you?
Hi, I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
Good. And I am good. And this is good. And we're getting at something here. And I think this week we're really going to get to the heart of it. So I don't even want to stop you. I just want to say, Volume 8, take us away. And I believe where we were was the family was consolidating land, as they always are, acting as a bulwark against Ottoman, I guess they would probably think of it as encroachment, into Europe. And I don't know, being the Hapsburgs. What am I forgetting?
Indeed. That is where we were. But today, I must admit that I've personally been having trouble keeping up with the Hapsburgs as much as I normally do. Right. There's only so much time in the day for research. And I have a newfound interest, perhaps you could say even passion for, the subject of prehistory. And as I've been learning more about ancient peoples and ancient sites, I have realized the profound relevance that this history has on all of our conversations. And I know that it might seem like we're going back in time, perhaps 12,000 years to the Neolithic.
I mean, I will
think
say
that
it feels a little bit like we're going backwards.
Yeah, well, I can assure you that we will be going forwards because there is a line that you can draw and that we must be able to draw, I think, between the Neolithic and modern times.
Is it going to involve the Habsburg nose? Is that going to be part of this?
It will. And
okay, then
I
please
think
go ahead.
Also the Hapsburg Castle, right? Because when we look, for example, at sites like Göbekli Tepe, right? So that was made in 10,000 BC. That's 12,000 years ago, right? This is much, much older than the pyramids. It's what, 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, right? So how are we supposed to understand, for example, a structure like the Hapsburg Castle if we can't understand the emergence of architecture as territory.
Were they? Are
and
you saying they
art.
were in the same place? Is that the connection we're making, or is it more tenuous than
No,
that?
no. It's that we have to look at how architecture emerged in the early dawn
Oh,
of
okay.
civilization.
Yikes. Okay.
Because that is how we can contextualize structures like the Hapsburgs relied on during their legacy.
Okay, so I'll bite. Okay, what was the first structure?
So the first structure that we know of, the oldest large monolithic structure, is Göbekli Tepe. Now that is in modern day Turkey. And the first temples, we believe, are 12,000 years old. Although, believe it or not, only 5% of this site has actually been excavated. And it's possible that lower down in deeper layers of sediment, there are even older remains. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that this was a ritual site, and it had many strange components to it. So when we look at these sites, they had temples, and we know that they're temples because they look very different from any sites where people lived. And they were organized with 12 columns in a circle that related to
the columns, the circle. But for those of us who will be familiar with Engels' much shorter book than I think we're getting from you on this, is the point of this that to make the temple and to have a certain kind of politics that the temple has, and maybe a surplus? Maybe did they find grain there? Was there evidence of farming, and was farming bad? I think our viewers want to know that.
Right.
Was there evidence of farming, and was it bad? Can we blame the farming?
That is a great, great question. And it actually brings me to this book that I've been reading. So here we have The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity.
Oh, geez, that looks longer than Engels.
Yeah, it's David Graeber and David Wengrow. It's pretty long. You can see I have bookmarks for where I am in the book as well as where I am in the notes, the end notes. It's very helpful so that I can easily
Are we going to have to do this whole thing to get to the Hapsburgs again?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think that this book is an urgent read, urgent commentary on today's time, and that I would recommend it universally, frankly. And I think that people will find it a page turner. It's exhilarating and thrilling, as prehistory always is. But they're particularly good writers on it, so it's accessible, I think, for a lay person. You don't have to be a history expert like me to appreciate the book.
Farming. I think farming was a good point of departure for us. We know the Habsburgs were farmers. We know a lot of the world is farming, and anyone who's ever been outside knows that farming is tough.
Right.
So, I mean, what does this big book tell us about it?
So it tells us some very important things, and this is part of the urgency of the book and the urgency of what we need to understand from this book. And so what it argues and shows evidence for is that many peoples over time, in fact, chose not to farm. They knew about farming and they decided not to farm. And sites like Göbekli Tepe, right, and others, they were made by civilizations who were foragers and what we might call hunter-gatherers. Right, so I think Engels, when you look at Engels' approach, or any approach that tries to put history into these nice little compartments, it's going to be wrong, of course with the exception of Posadism, but that is, of course, a post-terrestrial viewpoint. And so if we're limited to terrestrial history, what we see is that there really are no rules of history. And we can't just think of earlier peoples as more simple than us and just less complex, or that agriculture alone is a sign of a civilization's advancement. So the notion of having modes of production or different stages of civilization is just incorrect until, of course, we get to look at space communists really in the future. But for now,
I mean, well, you're looking at one now. I like to consider myself in that side of the world. Do you think based on what you're looking at in this big tome and the things that you're thinking about, do you think that there is any alternative society functioning? Does the book make reference to anyone who you would say is living outside of the kind of, as you rightly portray it, sort of hegemony of choices that we actually have made as a society, as a civilization?
Yeah, so I think that the book does think that there are tons of possible futures.
Currently.
Yeah, I think that it talks about how certain civilizations and in our own, we have sometimes gotten stuck in our ways. So the question of politics becomes, how can we get unstuck? I think the authors, though, do believe that we could get unstuck, and that just as in history, there are an unimaginable amount of different ways that people lived and organized their societies. The future also holds unimaginable amounts of ways that we could organize our society. And
This
I
is
think
amazing stuff.
it is amazing stuff. And I think that, that's, to bring it back, that's why we have to look at the Hapsburg model, because the Hapsburgs show us one way, perhaps even one of the best ways, like monarchy, to organize society.
We're coming back here. Yeah. Look, what I will say is that, as we're seeing Europe in many ways unravel, it does become sort of amazing that there was this family who kept so many different languages and ethnicities and community of families together. There does seem to be something special and maybe unorthodox at the heart of it. And maybe that's the point of this conversation we just had. And I think that it's really incredibly interesting stuff. What else would you like to leave us with before we close up Volume 8 of Keeping Up with the Hapsburgs and Miscellany? I'm going to throw in and Miscellany past it. Yeah.
Well, I think that what we should be keeping in mind because of this conversation, and also be looking forward to in our next conversation, is this idea that we can formulate our societies to be what we want them to be, and that we can really be looking at the Hapsburgs for an exemplary show of what is possible.
Yeah, and then you're going to tell us about this Reformation thing, and we're going to see what happens when a bunch of people decide to change a bunch of stuff.
Yes, we will. That is going to be very exciting.
Cool. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on the show. We appreciate your insight and your meticulous attention to detail and to the length and breadth of the historical record.
You got it,
Everyone,
for sure.
Hawley Brett.
Thank you.
Bless.
Comite, comitato, comitiet, comiteto, carul, comiti, wehiantwe, submiti, wecomiti.
Thanks so much for tuning into the committee program. We know you have many options when it comes to content consumption, and we appreciate your attention to this new season with new episodes on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 10 p.m. Central European Time. You can support the show by becoming a member on patreon.com/the committee program. You can follow committee on Twitter, /committee pro, on YouTube, the committee program, on Instagram, the committee program, on Facebook, the committee program, and you can visit the committee program company store at tpublic.com, the committee program shop. Special thanks, as always, to our team, Xhevat Castrati, Fiamma Meli, Jacopo Castelletti, Forrest, Lovette, and committee's deputy director, Julia Doubleday. Look alive out there. It's later than you think.
It's the end of our broadcast day. Thanks for listening.
This was the 9th program in our second series. For more global infotainment from the committee program, click on the video screen right or screen left. Please like and subscribe to the committee program on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central European